Being a filmmaker is a crazy, crazy life. I've experienced things that I never would have thought I'd get to. I've been places, met people, seen things that have left a mark on me in some way. It's just an extraordinary life. I mean, what other profession can you chase whales in Madagascar and then the next month be standing in a football stadium or on the stage of the West End or even riding a lifeboat in the dead of night? It is a job like no other because it gives you a window into every world. So if you're watching this and you're an aspiring filmmaker or you're thinking about becoming one, then let me tell you what life might have in store for you.
Outside with his friends playing basketball.
Number 1, surprises. When I was a kid, we would spend every summer with my grandparents up in Yorkshire, and we'd go down and watch the lifeboat launch. And it's one of my favourite memories from my early years. And I would sit and watch an aircraft carrier documentary on repeat. Skip forward 20, 30 odd years, I've got to experience both those things, all because of the camera. Time speeds up when we no longer see the novelty of life, the things in everyday life that we used to think were amazing as children. As we grow older, they're just mundane. And that's why, as you get older, time just seems to just continuously get faster and faster. So to slow it down and to actually get more out of life, you want to have variety and surprises that give you markers from different memories and different moments in your life. So when you look back, you can think about moments from that year and actually place it, because that will help slow time down. Every challenge is different, every opportunity is different. You never know what's going to come in through the door. I mean, last week I had nothing on and now I have a 4-day shoot next week. I never once thought I'd find myself in Bangladesh, and yet that's exactly what happened in my first year of my full-time film job. And I loved it. It was one of the most beautiful places I've ever been, where I met some of the most happy and kind-hearted, welcoming people I've ever met. And particularly as someone who I was a bit fussy with food growing up, it was full of surprise and novel experiences because I was trying flavors and different foods that I'd never had before. The whole experience is a real marker in my life, and it's that surprise that has stayed with me far more than anything predictable from that year, because I can't remember them. I'm sure many things happened, but the things that stand out are the surprises that I just never would have thought would come my way. If you want to read about 5 of the strangest places I've been, there's an article in the description below. Number 2, grief. There is a dark side to this job, and it's one that no one prepares you for. And that is the sheer amount of grief that you have to deal with. At least I certainly have had to in my short career so far. I've interviewed fathers who have lost their children to cancer, mothers and wives who have lost their sons and husbands to drowning. I've interviewed men who have contemplated suicide and even attempted it. I've even met young girls who were sent away from their home in their home villages to go work in the city and ended up homeless and in an orphanage. The volume of difficult situations that you're going to find yourself in, I really don't think there's many other jobs out there that has the same amount of that without the training or the kind of expectation for it. And it's a difficult thing when no one's showing you how to do it, because you have to be not only their friend and their counsel, but also the interrogator. It's up to you to actually get the job done. So that's a very difficult thing, to be put in that position where you are trying to help someone open up, but you're also there to ask those questions that no one wants to ask. When you walk into a home of someone you're going to interview who's lost someone in their lives, you can feel that void. It's a bizarre feeling because it resonates within you. You can actually feel it. Now, our job is not to fill that void or to amplify it, but it's simply to acknowledge it and actually help someone talk about that person who filled that void and in a way create that feeling that there's still someone there. It's a really hard part of the job, but there's so much to be gained from it. Don't get me wrong, I obviously spent some of my 20s out clubbing and enjoying my life as you do. But it's a real privilege to have that experience in your life where actually you are there to help people feel heard, and you're the person who gets to listen to that person, to that grief. Because sometimes grief is what allows us to breathe. You may be filming a documentary or a branded commercial, and this situation comes up, and it's up to you to treat that sensitively, but cherish it and appreciate that, because it's a very, very rare insight that not many other industries are going to be privileged to. And I'm sure that experience throughout my 20s has helped shape me into some of the person that I am today. So whilst from the outset grief can sound like a bad thing, there's definitely a reason to appreciate that in your career as a filmmaker. Number 3, friends to play with. I think something that a lot of us struggle with as adults is making new friends. And filmmaking is one of those industries where actually your work and your friends are going to overlap. I can't think of many other jobs where you want to hang out with your colleagues at the end of the day. You want to see them on the weekend. It's a community where we volunteer to spend crazy hours making films just for the love of it. Growing up with a couple of filmmakers that I knew, we would do 48-hour film challenges where, as it sounds, you'd get 48 hours to make a film. When you've worked 5 days and you then want to go spend your weekend working 14, 15-hour days for free in the same thing just because you love it, that is a real blessing if you can have that in your career. You know, the expression that if you do something you love, you'll never work a day in your life. There's a lot of filmmaking that does feel like work, but it's those moments where we're doing something just for the passion. That's what gives us a chance to make friends and actually just play, just to have that freedom to enjoy something. You know, we're still doing something productive, you're still putting your hard effort into something, but you're also having fun with a bunch of other people who just have that childlike enjoyment for filmmaking. Number 4, admiration. I got my hair cut the other day and she asked me what I did for a living, and I told her I was a filmmaker, and I just watched as her face lit up, and suddenly she had 10, 20 questions for me, because it's unusual, it's different, and sometimes we forget about it. The grass is always greener, right? So we don't always see how exciting our job is from other people's perspective, where they go to the same place every day, 5 days a week, whilst we get to go to so many different places and meet so many different people. And the reason that clients maybe don't understand or appreciate some of the elements we do is because it's such a mystery to many people, because there's so many parts to our job. Part of our responsibility is to actually help educate people about what goes into making a film. You know, all the different skills that you need, all the different years of experience that you bring. And you feel that when you talk to people about what you do. And even within our own industry, I admire other filmmakers so much. I have so much respect and time for many of the filmmakers I know, so many filmmakers that I don't know. And that admiration is what allows us to create new relationships, new friendships. I'm sure there's many other jobs where people will compliment what you do, but when you receive messages from people that you've never met expressing their admiration for your work, it is a truly humbling feeling, and one that I think you'll really enjoy if you follow this life as a filmmaker. And number 5, crushing self-doubt. The more I speak to filmmakers at every level, whether you are a beginner, you're an intermediate, or you've been doing it for years and years, there is a shared experience of anxiety and imposter syndrome and self-doubt. For me, that feeling of pressure has led to some incredibly anxious moments. Sometimes a project fills me with such dread and anxiety that I literally do not sleep the night before. I go and do the shoot having not slept a single moment. And I don't tell you that to put you off filmmaking, but more so to say that if you are a filmmaker and you don't constantly feel happy and on cloud 9 and like you are living your best life, that's okay, more than okay, that's normal. That is part of being a filmmaker, it's part of being a person. No matter what job we do, we are going to have those moments of anxiety and self-doubt. And because filmmaking, we put so much of ourselves into it, it becomes a little bit more amplified, where we take things personally, or we feel that connection far stronger to the outcome of the work. It's a roller coaster where the highs are really high, but the lows can be really low. And when we allow that isolation to really take over, we find ourselves thinking, like, what am I doing with my time? Is this the best use of my life? Like, what if I never make it? All these thoughts just stir in our head. I genuinely feel that as an industry, whilst we are great at collaboration, we are really bad at opening up and being honest to each other about these sort of things. If you're a filmmaker, especially if you're in a senior position, we really should be encouraging each other to help be open and honest about these things. I have 4 or 5 filmmaking friends who I talk to about these things, and normally it's because they pull it out of me. Something a friend recently said to me, and I think he put it perfectly, is, it's great to ask, how are you? But it's really important to ask, how are you really? To actually not just accept I'm fine as an answer. A couple of months back, I was just feeling really lost in terms of my filmmaking journey. And I kind of said, something vague along the lines of that to a friend. And he made sure that I didn't just kind of brush it off. We spoke about it, we sat there and we chatted about it for an hour or two. And that helped so much. And those filmmaking friends are out there, and you need them because only filmmakers are really going to understand exactly how that feels. Don't be wrong, there will be partners and friends and other jobs who experience similar things and will have a good idea of what you're going through. But film is a very different environment where we are pouring so much of our time and our energy into things that sometimes it helps to have people who do really understand that. And that's what is so great about being a filmmaker, is that there is that community. There are those people who will understand, and you can talk to about these things if you are prepared to open up and if you're prepared to ask someone, how are you really? So bear that in mind, because as great as some of the parts of being a filmmaker are, there are other sides to that. And that's not to put you off. That's merely to say, that's okay. If you feel that way, don't beat yourself up about it. Perhaps it's not the everything is awesome that you were expecting me to say. I don't think that's a fair or realistic interpretation of what any career is. But coming from a filmmaking perspective, there's definitely that side where people only make it sound like everything's glamorous. And actually, like any part of life, there are difficult moments and there are real human moments. The bigger the reward, the bigger the risk. A nurse gets to save lives, but they also have to deal with the days where they don't. A stockbroker can become a billionaire, but they can also lose it all. And we as filmmakers, we get to explore so many worlds, and we get to meet so many people and live a life like no other. But we do also have to recognize that there are challenges to this job, and a lot of that is just internal. It comes from a place of not talking about these things. So that is life as a filmmaker, and I, for one, no matter how difficult some moments may be, will almost definitely never move away from it, because I just love the moments that are so great. And at the end of the day, isn't that better than doing something that never makes you feel alive? So life as a filmmaker, it is amazing and it is difficult, and don't expect it to be either one of them all of the time or either one without the other. There's always going to be bits of both. If you're a filmmaker or thinking of becoming a filmmaker, then leave a comment. I'd love to have a chat and hear your thoughts on it as well. I'll see you soon.